Okay, 5:01, and we'll go ahead and start. Am I broadcasting through?
Yes, I can.
And you can see the screen?
Yes.
All right. I normally, not that I'm narcissistic, but I also usually pull it up on my TV, on my phone.
Yes, we can see that.
There we go. Um, all right. Okay, so I'm today, right? 15 October? Is that showing up on the screen?
I can see it.
You can see it. Okay. All right. So we're week 8, huh? Appreciate everybody joining. Lance, thank you for being here. So week 8 was you were done with your text readings, and I gave you an article. We'll talk about that in just a minute. You have a scenario, Xerox, page 63. So one of the tricks on this is making sure that you understand that that chapter was building an innovative and entrepreneurial organization. So again, going back into that chapter might help you a little bit. But it's looking at building climate, entrepreneurial behavior, top management support, and the like. And Xerox has had some challenges. So be a very interesting one to go through. All right, so let's take a look at some slides. All right, so you're going to, two cartoons up here that I thought were fun. On the left, 7 deadly sins of innovation: lust, envy, gluttony, greed, sloth, goes all the way into wrath. If it fails, I'll just fire the team. And then on the right, 8 types of innovation: incremental, line extension, watered down, fad, gluten-free toilet paper. I thought was funny. Breakthrough innovation. It's type where everybody says that'll never work. So understanding some of these and getting a kick out of it is a big thing. Some are very telling and reinforce what you got in the text. So I think it's worth your while. All right, your scenario study was Local Motors Incorporated, an industry city distillery. Again, reinforcing what was in the chapter, particularly as it talks about open innovation and certain concepts. One of those concepts I highlighted for you in my response. So in week 7, you're going to see a slide. That's going to look like, sorry about this, I'll get here in just a second. Understanding the, no, that's not what I wanted. I'm I'm sorry about that here. Hold on. Where's my... Okay, so open innovation, in other words, letting others use and see your ideas. But what both these companies have in common is at the bottom of the slide, which is something called co-creation spectrum. In other words, you're going through the idea conception through ultimately deploying or bringing to the market that certain innovation. At the same time, you're interacting with your consumers and you're getting product feedback. So in the case of your two companies, let's take, for example, Local Motors. Who was helping design the vehicle?
The
Customers. So in the co-creation spectrum, what you're seeing is a high level of complexity and degree of interaction to the degree that the customer is involved in building the vehicle. Okay. And there are three crucial factors that are used. And so if you pulled this into your response, you nailed it. At the top of page 180, what are those three crucial factors that go into establishing this co-creation program?
establishing appropriate motivators to keep the participants actively engaged in the process,
Right?
creating virtual tools that efficiency capture input and
Yep.
facilitate integration.
Right?
And
You kind of skipped over that first one.
so co-creation program includes determining who should participate in the program.
Determining who, okay? So if you've got a couple idiots who have no clue about what goes into a car that somebody else wants, if you got some whack job, that wants a Fred Flintstone mobile, be very careful. You might just get it. In other words, there's got to be some responsibility and some vetting, just so everybody understands. And so what you'll find is for a lot of these companies that build for, athletes and Hollywood stars and recording artists have a lot of money, they're very selective about who they'll do a product for. And you've seen some of that on certain TV shows like whatever Tank Men or whatever the guys that were building fish tanks, or the guy that builds tree houses, or the folks that do the pools. In other words, they're very selective in the jobs that they'll take because in part, you're known by your work. And if, you're cringing when you see your work out in the, in public, it's probably a good sign you may not have picked the right people. Anyway, good. So this is what I was kind of looking for, and the fact that it was two different companies. When you bring them current, one of the problems with the distilleries, particularly in Brooklyn, New York, is that they're running afoul of the local New York City government and the regulators and the health department and the variety of coding that goes on. And so essentially what you come to realize is that with success comes added visibility. And so as you're looking at it, your innovations have to now not just concentrate on your product, but also on your relationships. how you interact with local government. May take an innovative approach. That's why you start to see a lot of these established companies like Amazon wheeling and dealing and getting certain tax breaks. Why would Amazon need a tax break? Well, because they can. And partly it's you're getting a little, you're transferring some risk to that local government body. Anyway, good stuff. Okay. So remembering your SWOT analysis is good, and getting in. Your final paper is personal innovation assessment. So I've got mostly everybody's paper for week 7. The final paper, personal innovation, is an assessment of your strengths and weaknesses related to innovation and leadership. So take a look at that. Risk-taking, creativity, flexibility. Remember in LDR 300, you took some self-assessment exercises. You had about 3 to 4 every chapter, if you recall going through your text. And those would have shown some strengths and weaknesses. So, one of the things you may do is go back and look at your LDR 300 paper as it relates to the chapter on personal innovation. If you were having a hard time figuring out some strengths and weaknesses. The rest are, and these are up to you. There's really no wrong answer. I can't come in and say, Lance, I think you have a strength where you're identifying a weakness, so I'm going to grade you wrong. But at this point, I've gotten a feel for a lot of you, and I could tell within a certain framework of what kind of makes sense. But in the end, if you tell me that it is a weakness, and that matches to some of the problems, and that you see the linkage, and then you're able to apply whatever concept from the text that address that particular weakness, and you developed out your plan, then bingo, you nailed it. Okay. If you sit there and go, well, I have no weaknesses, so therefore I don't have any problems, and therefore I don't have to improve, and therefore I don't have to have a plan because I'm already a strong and capable leader, well, I'm going to ask you to rethink that a little bit. In other words, I think we could find something, because sometimes what I'll get, if I don't ask that question right, I'll get the, well, I can't find anything, so therefore I don't have to answer the question. Well, you do that at your own risk. So I'm sure everybody's got an area they want to improve. All right. So, not in the text, we had an article, right? And Harvard Business Review article that came out in the 1970s. It was updated in the late 90s, I think 99, when Stephen R. Covey wrote a follow-on article, Making Time for Gorillas. So I'm holding up the article, and it's still very valid, I think, and I think it's worth your time. And so William Oncken and Donald Wass developed out an article based on a metaphor. And as you see on my screen, I define out what a metaphor is. Figurative speech, which implies an implicit or hidden comparison between two things that are unrelated, but share some common characteristics. So in this case, we're not literally trying to figure out who's got a monkey. We are using a metaphor, a monkey on the back, to be a comparison between what? In this particular case, a task, a problem, and the like. So on the first question, that should have been apparent. The monkey in this case is whatever that task, problem, is. And by developing out the metaphor, you're able to link within that framework that who's got the monkey is more of a metaphor on who's working for who at a certain point. If you've got a subordinate with a task and you say, hey, let me take a look at that for you, or they present it to you for your input or you to solve, and now you're essentially working for your subordinate. And so it was bold at its time, and I think it was worth your all's reading. I hope you, Lance, I hope you found it of interest. I think hopefully everybody did. I think so, and I think it also is for parenting. In many regards, I would find myself, at a position where I'm basically working for my daughter, whether that was a school project that was due the next day, or a problem, or something that she was having that I took on, and not really thinking about it, and that's not very good way of teaching. Anyway, so the rest of this slide develops out what an aphorism is, and some rhetorical things that you might find of use. And so when I send these slides out in the next day or two, I take a look at these because we speak a lot in metaphors, particularly within leadership classes. And you're going to see them a lot more as you continue to go through the program. An aphorism is a pithy observation that contains a general truth. So when I say a rising tide lifts all boats, it's a pithy commentary on a truth. And that is, if everybody is helped, then everybody's going to achieve, and then go from there. A tricolon is a rhetorical term that consists of three parallel clauses, phrases, or words that come in quick succession without interruption. And they tend to ascend, and it's examples like, hey, tall, dark, and handsome. I'm going to fall for that hook, line, and sinker. The good, the bad, the ugly, Tom, Dick, and Harry, et cetera, et cetera. And the reason that I bring this up is you'll see in a lot of speeches and a lot of papers in the present day, a heavy use of tricolons. Even as recently as Barack Obama in some of his inauguration addresses, you will find multiple uses of these three parallel clauses. And that's why I say, to a degree, I'm a 3x5 rule guy. In the end, if you're making an argument and you're able to run in these three, particularly in quick succession without interruption, in support of your point, you're going to find it's very effective because people tend to identify for it. There's a rhythm to it. It's just interesting to take a look at. And then malaphor, which is where you've got a blend of idioms, and it's basically using a metaphor incorrectly. And these are kind of fun because they tend to pop out. You use them more as a humor device than anything else. Too many cooks spoil the child. It's not rocket surgery. We'll burn that bridge when we come to it. These are all combinations of metaphors that produce a nonsensical result. Okay, too many cooks spoil the pot, spare the rod, spoil the children, right? We're going to do this until the cows come home, when hell freezes over. Okay, so they're two unrelated. So anyway, it's just kind of fun. So as you're going through these and you're doing all these writings, learning some of these rhetorical techniques may help you. And that's why I just share it with you. Okay. And so you get a little bit more in depth on these slides. Okay, so in the Who's Got the Monkey article, and we notice that monkey is used as a metaphor, he tells you that there are three kinds of time. There's boss-imposed time, there's system-imposed time, and then there's self-imposed time. And you already probably note, particularly those of you who are working full-time, certainly as adults, this is more so easily for you to recognize than it is for your typical undergraduate who's just coming out of high school. That boss imposed and system imposed time takes up a heavy dose of your day. And so whatever's left becomes yours. But even then, that subordinate imposed time, you're going to find you've lost some control over. And so how you wrest control of that back is what this article really is all about, and what it's trying to say. When you're looking at it and you're looking into this article, you're going to find that I was asking that second question. How did I word that second question? I used a specific phrasing. The anatomy of managerial initiative, right? Is that how I asked it?
Yes.
Okay.
Why is knowing the anatomy of managerial initiative so important?
All right. So what we're dealing with here is a great article that not only, and I'm going to hold it up again, not only identifies a problem for you, it actually gives you tools to fix it. And what they're getting at here is that leading into the anatomy of the initiative is they want you to do a couple things, one of which is highlighted in the lower right-hand corner of my slide, a sign that says, read before entering this office. And in fact, I've used this sign, and you'll find on the article, page 5, right-hand column at the bottom of the page, the same ground rules. At no time while I'm helping you with this or any other problem will your problem become my problem. All right, so as I'm talking to you, the subordinate, and I'm aware that there's a monkey on the back somewhere, I'm going to tell you right up front, there's some ground rules. And the first is, you're not transferring that problem to me. Secondly, when this meeting is over, the problem will leave this office exactly the way it came in. In other words, the monkey's going to be on whose back when you leave this office? The employees. Third, in the instant, I'm sorry, I've got that a little mixed up. There was a second. In the instant your problem becomes mine, you no longer have a problem. I cannot help a person who does not have a problem. So it's kind of a good lead in. I liked it. Anyway, so that led into when the meeting is over, the problem will leave the office exactly the way it came in, on your back. Now, you may ask my help at an appointed time, and that better show up on your calendar. But in other words, manage your time. And so you're going to tell them that if this problem is important enough to be fed, quote unquote, meaning we have to spend time on it, then we need to feed at a scheduled time. If you look at real live monkeys in the zoo, are they fed on a consistent basis? Are they fed at a particular time? Okay, and there is reason for that, because you've got people that also have to go feed the tigers and the lions and the bears. Lions and tigers and bears, oh my. There you have another treacle on lions, tigers, and bears. Anyway, so we'll make a joint determination at the next move of what the next move will be, which of us will make it, and in those rare instances where the next move turns out to be mine, we will determine it together. I will not make any move alone. So these kind of become the ground rules. And then what you do is you're going to take a look, and I find this a lot. Have you ever worked for a boss that thought you were working under a different level of initiative than you were? In other words, Did you ever go out and accomplish something and the boss said, wait a minute, you should talk to me first? Or conversely, have you ever worked for a boss? Why do you keep coming in to me with this? Deal with it. That's your job. Take care of it. In other words,
I've seen that before.
I have, and I've worked for both sides. And so the whole thrust of this article is these 5 degrees of initiative. Wait until you're told, ask what to do, recommend, then take action, act, but advise at once, act on your own, then routinely report. In other words, this is almost a rheostat. It's a range. The most restrictive initiative is wait until told to do so. Lance, you're not going to open that text until I tell you to do so. You're not going to read that chapter until I tell you to do so. You're not going to write that paper until I tell you to do so. That's very restrictive, right? Do I have to tell you when to read the text? No, but I give you certain targets, right? I tell you certain chapters by the week, okay? And those usually fall within 3 degrees. Recommend, then take action. In other words, I want you to write, I'm going to recommend to you read chapter 10, and then I'm going to ask you questions based on it, right? The least restrictive amount of initiative is allowing somebody to act on their own and then routinely get feedback of some sort.
Right.
Okay? You're not just going to let somebody go off and do whatever and then not get any feedback from them. That isn't even really within the realm of leadership. In LDR 300, they would try to call that laissez-faire leadership, a boss who just lets you do whatever. I don't think that's a form of leadership. I think that's just abrogating responsibility. And that to me isn't really even worth defining as leaders. But the whole article is trying to drive you away from assigning levels 1 and 2 to your subordinates, because you're not teaching them, you're not leading them, you're not allowing them to figure it out. If Paige, my daughter, had a science project due for school, and I told her wait until I told her to do something, she's not going to learn, and who ultimately does her project? I do, okay, which it defeats the purpose. So what they want you to do is schedule that time and make sure that subordinate knows what degree of initiative you're assigning him or her to that problem. And it could be one of those 5. But think back in your own leadership style. Have you ever presented a task to a subordinate but didn't give them that level of initiative that you want them operating under? And was there a disconnect? I think if we sat long and hard enough, you would say, yeah, plenty of times. Right. I know I did after reading this article. It was a light bulb went out. Go, well, holy cow, I remember assigning tasks, but I never told the gunny, well, I did a couple times, hey, just take care of it. Well, that is a level of initiative. And be careful when you say, just take care of it, okay? Because you may have some unintended consequences. On the other hand, it may be so routine, you're basically telling that subordinate, hey, that's your level, not mine. And, we need to be cognizant of levels that we operate at. Okay, and then even better is once they've worked through this anatomy of managerial initiative, in other words, the importance to leader, the reason that one of the major things I wanted you to get out of this article was these levels of initiative. Hey, you're going to assign a time, it's going to be on the calendar. That subordinate knows what level of initiative they're operating under. And hopefully it's at a level where they are learning adversity, responsibility. In other words, if leadership is about making everybody better, which we continually say it is, if we are true to transformational leadership, as we learned in LDR 300, then I think it's well worth noting. Okay, and then in the end, the article goes on to tell you that there are 5 rules in the care and feeding of monkeys. And I'll leave those to you read. Rule number 1, though, I think is funny, that monkeys should be fed or shot. In other words, if it's no use keeping this around, then get rid of it. Why are you feeding something that isn't bringing anything into the organization? And so sometimes there are problems or tasks that we're going to get rid of. But number 5, every monkey should have an assigned next feeding time and degree of initiative. So not only am I telling you when you're going to come back and see me, I've told you what level of initiative that we're operating under. So if I told you that I went to meet with you, Lance, in a week to find out what happened, and I want you to act on your own and then routinely report, when do you think you would probably come back and let me know? Probably at that next meeting, right? And, yeah, I mean, you're gonna, that makes sense. I don't need to talk to you until our next meeting. Conversely, if it's important enough, I may tell you, yeah, we're gonna have a meeting on this next week. But before we do, I want you to answer a couple questions for me. And so you're basically, starting to add little qualifiers to that level of initiative. So just something to, read through again, kind of take stock of where you're at, and see what it does for you. Now, Covey does an interesting job here when he says in his article, Making Time for Gorillas. And he essentially says that this article doesn't address an aspect of delegation that had greatly interested him over the past 20 years. And that some managers are actually eager to take on the subordinates' monkeys. Okay? And a lot of us are guilty of that. Hey, I'll do that because it's quicker. Okay, I mean, we're moving, and we don't have time, so I'll take it. Well, okay, think about the long-term effects of what you're doing. I really learned this when I was an advisor to an Iraqi brigade in OIF 2, where we had to be very careful doing things for the Iraqi army that they needed to be doing themselves. The sooner we got them doing it for themselves, the sooner we could send Marines and soldiers home. And so, yeah, there was some real growing pains, and it hurts. And, it's frustrating. But at some level, there's got to be that opportunity to grow. And so just be mindful of what Covey is offering up. All right. So what? So in the end, I tell you that organizational success, leadership, your curriculum here is summed up in one slide. Here it is, 7 very simple concepts of who's and hows. Who to recruit, who to promote, who to make a senior leader. How to organize, how to equip, how to train, how to execute. And this is all very true within the realm of innovation. You've learned in LDR 360 that who you're recruiting makes a difference. Who you're promoting, who you're making senior leaders, how you're organizing, how you're equipping, how you're training, and how you're executing your mission all have significant impacts on innovation and creativity within an organization. If your organization thrives on creativity, then you need to be hiring folks who are predisposed to creativity. That makes it a very simplistic statement, and I'll grant you that I'm not trying to make this as simple as that bold statement. But you'll see time and again where certain practices within an organization isn't matching with what they say or want to be. And that's where you start to run into trouble. If you are saying, I want a more mature force in the Marine Corps, then why are you hiring 18-year-olds? Right. Okay, or why are you not looking at level of maturity? And we grapple with this within special operations community, where we take a hard look at certain diagnostics as we're assessing people. There's certain things that we're looking for. And this becomes a very interesting dynamic as you're processing it through. It goes way beyond, hey, does this person have a high school, diploma? It used to be you couldn't enlist if you didn't have 2 front teeth. The reason you had to have two front teeth is so you could rip the cartridge wadding open to pour your ball and powder down the barrel of your musket. Okay, well, in this day and age, do you have to have two front teeth?
No.
Yeah, well, maybe because of looks, but so just being cognizant of what you got. Anyway, okay, so that's it. This is Xerox and your paper. So I read your papers 3 times. So the papers I've got now, I've actually printed. And I got your paper right here. I read them first to see if I could see your position statement, your thesis, and general organization. Did you spell my name wrong on the title sheet? Believe it or not. Who took a stab at an abstract? Who didn't? Okay, not a that in of itself isn't a graded out item. If you took a stab at it, I'll give you feedback on it, and I'll note that you took a stab at it. If you didn't do an abstract, no harm, no foul. The second reading is more in depth and make sure that I look at things like how you do your argument, do your paragraphs transition, do you have run-on sentences, are you using the correct word, because Microsoft will check spelling, but I've used this example all the time, particularly in a evaluation, we tend to have to assess, right, that organization, right? Well, one of the papers I had kept using that. And after the first couple times and the chuckle factor wore off, it got irritating, because that tells me that you may have spell checked your paper, but you didn't proofread your paper. So make sure you proofread. Then once I've done that, and I read everybody's, the third iteration is I look at what I originally thought and if I still feel that way. In other words, there may be certain days I'm grading paper that I'm pissed off at you. There may be other days that I'm being too generous. And so I'll kind of look as a whole. I don't grade on a curve, but I'll kind of take into account what everybody's done and where you're at, and just kind of take that step back and then go back in and read. What'll happen then is I will post your feedback, your grade and feedback, so you'll see it. And then if I don't hear from you in a day, then I'll go on and post your final grade. In the end, if there's any issues, certainly bring them up. Okay? All right. For those of you that are going on to LDR 340, looks like I've got you. I was given that contract today.